Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. The information that I'm going to share with you, you'll have to listen very attentively. Now, as you know, the Federal Postal Court and its judges and its staff deal with mortgages, which is another word for death pledge. You already know that. So what I did last week is I investigated the length and breadth of what this word means in the funny quasi world that these people live in. And it is horrific in every sense of the word. And that's what I'll be sharing with you. How horrific this word mortgage really is. First and above all things, you've got to understand, and I really do mean you're going to have to understand this, or be so cognizant of every sentence that I'm saying to you, which in itself is a whole chapter and a verse. The mortgage itself is a debt pledge that is quite literally, once you sign that document, irrespective of whether you've paid off anything or have not paid off, in their world of necromancy, this is what it is, it's necromancy. In their world of necromancy, it means that you have pledged, and they have pledged, their entire life, as it were, in death. So my language very rarely carries much adjectives because I'm not artistic in my language. I'm more precise, although I can communicate. So I need to paraphrase this for you. When you sign means to signify. It's another word saying it's a simulation of nature, but not nature itself. When you put that wet ink signature to that document, what you are saying is that you will be moving into their world of death, okay, mort, that's what it means, and that you have pledged the entirety of yourself in death. In other words, by signing this document, you are openly stating to them that you would prefer a death sentence to be moved into the world of necromancy and in the world of witchcraft and wizardry and slave trading and bigotry and so on and so forth, rather than show signs or autonomous life, what we call nature. So for the third time, let me make it as clear as I possibly can. We thought that the death pledge was like a 25-year, something 25 years that you do. Okay? And in doing so, what you actually have done, and which we didn't know, is that you have actually committed your entire life to death and to forever forego life. It's quite literally in their word, quite literally in their belief, in their spell casting. It means that you have chosen death over life, and you have pledged that death, not the life, that you have pledged that debt to us, the banks, the people that practice this type of dark witchcraft. Now, I'm the Chief Federal Postal Court Judge and the Plenipotentiary Judge. As a Plenipotentiary Judge, I'm educating you. As a Chief Federal Postal Court Judge, When you practice necromancy using the conduits of the post office, which is the conduits of contracts, whether that will be for warfare, for courting, love-making, love letters, whether that will be for necromancy, whether that will be for living men and women, or for autonomous living people. The post office services all of it. And each one of these things has a conduit, like the various conduits that you would see in a movie, especially a movie where you put a spectacle on and you get to see who you're really up against as the movie portrays aliens. But it's more horrific than that. So for the final and last time, before I start to give you the evidence of what I'm speaking about, is that you have not pledged your life. You've actually foregone your ability to control yourself in death. In other words, they have essentially grave robbed you even before you've passed away. That is like saying that suicide is more preferable. Suicide is more preferable than life is. So as a result, we'll move you into the position of suicide by signing these documents so we can service you for the entirety with that pledge. What they service you with is necromancy, which is nothing. They take everything that they can over a 25-year period until your pledge is complete. What that means is that they have now taken your entire life away, the best part of your life, and have successfully moved you into the position of forever being dead. It's a death pledge. And here's the trickery and the necromancy that these people play. There is, apart from the engineers of this darkness that understand how this works, and one of them is that in death, ladies and gentlemen, and listen very carefully, in death, it's forever. When you are dead forever. And that's what they have done. They've put you in this position forever. What does that mean? Your progenies, your children, are the product of that death pledge as well. And they take custody of your children, known as ward of state, but not to protect the children. The word children itself means ward of state. Do you see how these people work? Do you see what I'm saying to you? You see, they know that you have a limited life, so you only have value to them in the course of a limited life, which is in the form of health. It's only 25 years in their engineering. And thereafter, what they're after is to keep you permanently in mortgage. And in doing so, they take ward and custody of everything in your life. I am now preparing myself to show you the evidences of what I'm saying to you. Okay? So, first of all, let's go on to the language. You know that a mortgage is another word, and it's a French word for death pledge. The French came up with this, the French aristocracy. The French Revolution, the workers' revolution that you hear about, it's nonsense. It's engineered, folks, to walk you into this. So the language itself, with the poison prefixes and the nature of the cursive language, the nature of the cursive language, the language itself is supporting that you really are in debt. Because what's another word for a signature? It's cursive signature when you put it in italic and you do this. That means that's the way that the witch and the wizard write your name to cast a spell upon you in witchcraft, and in this case, called a mortgage. So, every time you curse, every time you watch people cursing, you watch TV programs that curse, and you put a cursive, and you write in a language called Babel, a language that has little or no meaning, apart from the meaning of intention that you put into it, called presumption and assumption. That in itself is all evident of that you are in a perpetual state of death. And that death in the world of hell, as it were, as in hallelujah, that's what hell means. It means hallelujah, hell come upon people. That language from your word, and remember what the Gospels say to you. Gospel means good news. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. They understand these type of languages very well, and they understand this type of scripture, as it were, very well. And they understand the word that you speak is what you manifest. Just as the children that you would curse, your own children, grow up to be cursed, like calling them stupid and dumb. What happens? They grow up to be what? Stupid and dumb. David Wayne Miller broke the spell. He broke the spell on the language, and he disqualified it using mathematical precision. You understand? He showed you, using mathematics and scientific method, that the language is engineered corrupt. What I am doing is telling you why it has been corrupted in such a way, is to keep you in a perpetual state of cursive and in the world of the dead. Because the dead curse, the living give life. What they call blessings in many ways. You understand this from the hundreds of hours that are available of David Wayne Miller speaking. He broke that in your vocabulary, in your ability to cast these spells and these words. He broke it by for you to be able to formulate like a mathematical formulation or a chemical formulation or a formula to be able to get out of this cursive. Having said that, in whatever language you choose, your ability to undo 1,000 or even just one generation of cursive that you did by pen can be all done with another pen. That which has been done with a pen can be undone with a pen. What other types of cursive words can we think of when we are dealing with bankers, politicians, and all of these practitioners of necromancy? Is that all of that is in the world of artistry as well. Now, you know and I know you cannot write your contracts in artistry, because in artistry, 1,000 people's opinions and their 1,000 opinions is what it is. It's what it is to you until you begin to question it. And that's where the pen becomes. So you're starting to undo the cursive. You're starting to do the undoing of the mortgage, the death pledge. In this corona period, because you have been fully birthed, every single mortgage is actually null and void. In the corona period, which means the birthing, like, with Jesus having that halo around his head. Let's not call it a halo because you now know what it means. But that's the glow a man or a woman would emit when they are living. And that is also the expression when a baby is being born, that it's a crowning moment called a corona. In this period, all debts, mortgages, and etc. are all null and void. But if you choose to remain for the sake of security, for the sake of the words of a banker or a politician, if you remain quiet, then you become silent witnessing party. In other words, you have made no objections. You have made no objections. Do you remember the ritual that you see in James Bond movies? Especially, I think, Live and Let Die, where the witch doctor with his white mask taps on the stone, the gravestone, and a body rises and it becomes alive. You see, what that character with the skull is doing is saying, I have the ability to take people out of the cursive. I know you don't know that, and you don't understand how film psychology and film symbolic language works. But essentially, what he's doing is saying that I'm going to take them out of the world of mortgages and I'm going to bring them back to life. This is why that figurehead calling itself Elizabeth, the Queen as it were, when she anoints people with a sirhood or a knighthood, she taps with a sword, on the left shoulder, the head, and the right shoulder 3 times. Sometimes you see it twice. And she says, rise. What she's basically saying is that you have been dead so far, and now I'm taking you out of the dead with a fictional name, with a fictional title. In other words, I'm only going to give you the illusion that you have new life. And to back up my fictional way of life, I'm going to give you a fictional name called a fictitious name. And you will have a fictitious title called a Sir or whatever it is. This is the beginning of what the bureaucracy is. Now, let's talk about the bureaucracy. Most of yous know that the bureaucracies are actually administered by the administrative courts, what's commonly known as the admiralty courts. And there they all do business, doing business as trading names, as fictitious names, because they are never birth names. And they speak in a language of the dead, which is Black's Law Dictionary. Black means no standing in law. So it means that dictionary has no standing in law. And they're all graduates of the Mortar Board Society, which is the degrees that you have when you wear the black robe of death, showing honor to the dead, and they give you a mortar board of dead. These are the costumes of funeral directors. Okay, that's the costume of funeral directors. And the judge wears it, and sometimes the other party that usually sits on the right of you also wears it. Okay, and they put a hood over their head called a wig to show that they are hiding their wicked ways from the Creator, or God, as it were. And the bureaucracy, the whole bureaucracy runs on accusations after accusations, called cursive. When somebody throws an accusation at you, that's cursing, because an accusation has no evidence, and that's called a plaintiff. A plaintiff is a man or a woman that wishes to throw something at you, like a plate of mud or feces, and hopes that sticks. And the job of the judge in court is to make sure when the plaintiff throws that mud or feces at you, the judge makes sure that he can smear as much of that feces into your face, into your costume, into you, to get you to believe that the charges are going to stick In other words, the plaintiff's charges are going to stick onto you. You see, that's called the Spanish Inquisition, and they all wear black. In other words, I'm going to accuse the man across the road of being a necromancer, and I take him to court as a plaintiff because I got no evidence. And the job of the court and the judge is to make sure that that sticks, that you take possessions of his accusations. You see, in law, it's very simple. He who makes an accusation must provide evidence, otherwise it's called what? Slander. If you make a claim, you have to show evidence for that claim. Otherwise, what is it called? Yeah, it's called false claims. You know that. So, you know that there is an entire bureaucracy out there that supports the dead language, the dead mortgages, and services the dead. It services the dead. You understand? Because you're never brought in as live. Yeah, you're brought in as the dead, and the judge says, all stand, just like the Queen does, and you stand up, giving you temporary life to take energy away from the living and transmit it to the dead, known as the plaintiff, going through a middleman called a judge who wears black robe. Beware of the black-robed devil. Devil by connotation. Devil by language means no veil. It means nothing hidden. Just like demon means no one. D-E means one. D-E means no. And M-O-N means one. Like uni means one. There are different forms of the same expression to confuse you. You now understand 100% what the bureaucracy is, with no flaws in it. Perhaps a few more adjectives will give you a complete one, but I lack adjectives in my explanation. So this is why it's important that you share these videos, because I'm not trained in the use of artistic language called Shakespearean language. And that comes on to your name. Your name at all times is nom de guerre. Okay? And the nom de guerre way of writing your name is usually in the all capitals, completely, signifying that this is a past way entity that needs to be given temporary life to remove sweat equity commercial energy from it. Yeah, nom de guerre is like when you join the army. They write your name in all capitals because to say that you have already died if you think the enemy is outside of you or outside of your own home or country. And that's why when you sign their documents, it also says they can experiment on you in any which way that they want. In any which way they want. Just look up your service records and the contract you sign, it will have a clause in it. You understand that now? So we've covered nom de guerre, what that means. It means a false name. And I do have a presentation as a slide presentation, which I'll come on to later on after I've done this. In the necromancy world, because you don't understand what legislative is and what executive is and what judiciary is, in these paperwork that they get you to sign, which are all written in Shakespearean language, in there they put a power of attorney. That power of attorney allows them to administer all variant spelling names that you actually should take control of. In other words, you own your names, what they call legal names. They're called legal fiction names. In doing so, they administer even all the variant spelling names that you have. Now, if you look at your gas bill, electricity bill, property tax, or council tax, or whatever it is, from whichever department, including your passport, you lay all those correspondences next to each other, you'll find each one of those names that have come through your letterbox that you think is your name is all written differently. Your gas bill was written differently from your electricity bill. Your bank account name is written differently from your birth name. And it's written different from your passport name, your driving license name. In fact, every single account seems to have a different way of spelling your name. And this is how they keep account of how many legal fiction names that you have created on the back of ignorance, so they can control each one of these legal names. This used to be like the foundational things of tricks and traps. But my students have now progressed so much, I can share this information with you. So because you don't take control or take responsibility for your legal fiction names, as it were, you don't have any legislative powers, unlike my tricks and traps students. And because you also signed and never undone that document called powers of attorney, they take control of it, even in the point of death. Hence, people that administer your will, as it were, are all done by bar attorneys who administer dead people. You understand what I'm saying? You see, the volume that narcissists and psychopaths and these incredibly disturbed ways of doing things has no end to it. Has no end to it. Because death is endless. That's why they go for your children. Yeah? You understand? So, your power of attorney, your mortgage, is essentially attached to your children, and the children coming in the future, which you have no knowledge of. It's all encompassing. If that has not frightened you, then nothing will, and it might be better for you to just move off this channel. And if you've subscribed to it, just unsubscribe and just move away. Because I want my students to listen to this with a full horror in mind of what is happening in your world and what has happened. Okay, so the question now is, well, if human beings are dead, as opposed to men and women, what about the money that they carry in their pocket? You know, that will buy you a loaf of bread. Yeah, yes, it will. What's that money called? Did you buy it with did you buy it with a piece of gold, silver, or copper? No, you didn't. You bought it with no other mineral. As a result, we have a name for that. You know what the name of that is. It's called fiat currency. So even the money in your pocket signifies that you are spending and using dead instruments called fiat currency. All that's coming to an end because Bitcoin, blockchain, is going to be colonizing this planet. Okay, it's going to be colonizing this planet. And Bitcoin is a coin of faith. And men and women have faith, and that's a fact. You understand how quickly your world is changing before you, and the men and women that have worked day and night to bring this change about. So the money that you spend itself is a significance of dead instruments. It's that simple, ladies and gentlemen, called fiat currency, which is backed by another dead instrument called government or parliament, which means talking mental, parlay, and minting their madness. Okay, M-E-N-T means of the mind, and minting, when you mint something, is also of the mind. The legal fiction name, as you know, okay, is given away by you, just as your life force was given away by you by doing those, by signing those documents. This is why you have movies after movies to tell you, read the details. If you presume and assume, you're going to walk yourself into a trap. And that trap, ladies and gentlemen, has kept humanity in servitude and in bigotry and in absolute poverty for over 150 years. There's a huge gap, by the way, in the period of 150 years ago and about 50 years or so while the transition was taking place into the world of necromancy by the Olympians, which is the gods that human beings worship. You understand the length and breadth of this. We know that the county court coroner administers the living and the deputy coroner administers the dead, which are corporate instruments. And it's controlled out of that. If you continue with this garbage called debt, sin, if you carry on with the death pledges called a mortgage, continuing wanting to spend dollars and pounds and euros, you will always be in the world and signify and transmit to the world that you are still and wanting to be in the world of the dead after you watch this. That's why the Federal Postal Court, and thank God, we was given this task to be able to remove the death pledge from people's lives. It is in the nature of dead people and wanting people and needy people to always get you to do things for them. These are all the behavior and conduct of soap opera characters and the movie stars and some of the people that you follow. One character comes in mind, although I know little or nothing about them, called the Kardashians or something. Not even the actors and actresses that act that are what they are. That's like accusing, Arnold Schwarzenegger of being Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a fiction name. Yeah, not even he can be that because that's an actor's name. It's like me wanting to become like Clint Eastwood, and certainly in my younger ages, I really did want to become Clint Eastwood. But not even the man playing Clint Eastwood can be that because such a thing doesn't exist. So what is it that I'm aspiring to in my younger age through programming and exposure to this type of movies? It's programming me to follow fiction and identity. The soap operas that you watch, in this country we have a program called EastEnders, and in Americas you have quite literally hundreds of soap operas that cause you to constantly cry and be in what? Sorrow. As if you are constantly dying. And the soap operas, especially like the Indian soap operas or the film industry, keep people there in perpetual state of sorrow and mourning. Yeah, that's what the soap opera does. And the brainwashing in their industry goes on for like 2.5 hours to 3 hours. It's a whole all morning's event, or a whole afternoon's event or evening. You understand what I'm saying? It's an entirety to keep you in a perpetual state of mourning and in sorrow, as if to say that your father or your mother or your children have died. And the emotions and the feelings are engineered by bankers who commission these works, these movie works, to keep you in that perpetual state. There are other movie makers that try to do their best, like get you out of it, like the Marvel Book comic characters, as to opposed to the Washington or the DC comics, which is about hero worship. The soap operas, because of the use of the media and the television, they have a profound effect on the psyche of humans to keep them ever feeling bad about themselves and forever subject to the whims of their dictators called governments or legislative bodies. With the Americans, we saw in the 1960s when Orson Welles did the War of the Worlds, and people began to leave the city of New York when he radio transmitted that the world is being invaded by aliens. And that's a test, ladies and gentlemen, as to how far they can push it. They know that you are so responsive that you would leave your homes, get in a car and run for dear God on the back of a DJ, which is what Orson Welles, the actor, was when he did that. On the back of a DJ, they are measuring how much power this DJ has in your personal life by getting you to experience that. And that gives him evidence that you are still in the grips of necromancy. So the soap operas, like the BBC soap operas, need to be switched off all over the world. It is highly addictive to be in a perpetual state of negativity. You understand? Negativity is part of nature's negative reinforcement. That is, when a bee stings you, you remember the sting of the bee rather than the taste of the honey, because the taste of the honey has no real deadly consequences. But the sting of a bee is painful and can have deadly consequences. Eating a teaspoon or a tablespoon of honey has no deadly consequences, so it's not fixed as a traumatic experience. So it has a negative feedback loop. And they know this. And they engineer movies, soap operas, the language, the bureaucracy, to keep you in a perpetual state of necromancy, in bondage with death pledges, and etc., which unfortunately your children have been tied into. I will give you all that supporting evidence towards the end. Let's come on to the medical industry. You know the report by Dr. Null, Null, is a report on death by medication. You have an entire industry that gives you not health, but death. And it even broadcasts how deadly their medications is and take up the legality of pharmaceutical. The word pharmaceutical means what? Maker of potions. Makers of potions and poisons attached to witchcraft, wizardry, which is the definition of necromancer. And I'll come on to that later. So what I'm saying to you, 150 years ago, perhaps 170, 160 years, give or take a few decades, the world changed to a very traumatic event. And to support that trauma and to keep human beings in that perpetual state of trauma, hundreds of industries, makers of poisons, medications, books, languages, religions, republishing of books, a bureaucracy, a banking system, a transport system was all created, an energy system even, all created to tell you the world has changed into the Dark Ages. And in that Dark Ages, they made history books about Dark Ages, how life is so very better now than it ever was, when that itself is a lie. You tell the slave after you, before you, had a very bad life and how well you have it, making them feel better for being a slave. These are called pleasement policies. Pleasement policies. So I want to explain to you, Medicare, NHS, what is it that they do? What is it that they do? They administer poisons and potions because all the pharmaceutical industry's medications, as it were, are registered poisons. You know that. And you know that because it says so. The direct effects of taking this is that this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. And because they have engineered a language for the dead that constantly walk around with no consciousness, with no conscience or consciousness, they call it a side effect. It's like saying, this is a bullet, and if you hit it with a hammer here and point it towards you, it will have a side effect. And one of the side effects is that the bullet will plunge itself away from the casket, hit you in the face, and push against material after material until the exiting hole becomes so massive that it leaves a big hole like that. And by the way, that is only a side effect. If you take this pill, it will cause you a lobotomy of types, suicidal thoughts or tendencies. But then again, it might make you better, which is a chemical change in your body. But if the chemical change causes you a lobotomy, then that's just a side effect. Like if you take this bullet, hammer it, this is only a pen, of course, you hammer it, and in the hammering, you might miss yourself, and therefore you might just become deaf or get frightened of the loud noise, or you need to go to hospital, but you recover because the bullet didn't hit you directly. The language supports how much human beings ignore the direct effects of mortgages, of loans, it's called sins, cursive language, speaking in Babel language, picking up legal fiction names that you cannot recognize or control, allowing the administrative courts to administer your fare, taking no responsibility, even though you've heard all of this, to do anything about it, but remain the silent majority. What are the dead? The dead are quiet. The dead are silent. Have you ever been to a graveyard? It is as quiet as a graveyard. It is dead as a graveyard. There's no life in a graveyard. You understand what I'm saying? Your silence is the silent majority. I've covered for you the medication as well. Let's go on to faith. Men and women, as you know, have faith. And faith, by its very definition, has no evidence for it. It's the energy that you put in to be able to do what you need to do, called manifestation. And when you manifest it in the world of the dead, somebody wants to steal it from you. And the bureaucracies allow that sort of a theft to take place. In other words, when you have something of value, the governments themselves, who administer this on your behalf, allows that theft to take place unpunished, but publicize greatly about one or two things to make you feel what? Pleased that they're doing their job. Nothing is far from the truth. Nothing is. This is how you remove people's faith and turn it into a religion. That's why human beings practice religion. Practice means amateur, non-professional, as it were. Men and women have faith in what they do. Yeah. These religious people, they want evidence, and they want proof of what? Of your inability to do something? Yeah. That's the difference between faith. People with faith will take that bold step, not knowing whether there is a step there, and have enough faith in themselves and creative energy to build a step as they walk along. That's called creativity. This is why when you go to church, when you go to the Hindu temples, when you go to the Lord Buddha temples, Lord Buddha, that's a contradiction in itself. When you go to these synagogues and these mosques, they don't give you faith, because faith cannot be given. But what they do is take creative energy away from you by getting you to submit, submit, submit. When's the last time that you constantly submitted to your father or your mother? That's called what? Yeah. It's called narcissism. If you don't do what I say, I'll break you, or I'll put you in hell. These religions were all created by bankers, including the medication industry, the banks itself, and so on and so forth. And that's why sometime this week or next week, I'm going to blow the lid on what Jehovah means. Faith, ladies and gentlemen, is removed and you are put into a place called worship. Do you know what worship means? It means woe on a ship, sorrow on a ship. It's a derivative of the word war. It means warmongers on a ship with fiction names. Do you know these reverent names are all fiction names? They're legal fiction names. That's why they give Buddha, which is a pronoun, a title when he'd done his best to get out of the past of the world of lords, and when he passes away, they put him back as a lord, saying that he's the landowner. A landowner is essentially a man or a woman that controls your land. You are made of land, dust to dust. You're made of dust and you return to dust. In other words, they administer your life. Look at the devastating effect of South Africa under the apartheid system. And now look at the devastating effect of another very pernicious character called Nelson Mandela, which itself is a legal fiction name. Look at WikiLeaks, which is the public platform of governments to dispose of their decommissioned works, which they pretend comes at great cost to another legal fiction name calling itself Julian Assange. Ladies and gentlemen, men and women, you cannot have a death pledge in the corona period. If you do, you are consenting to forego your golden age, your ability to claim factual money. Yes, there are men and women that are working hard behind the scenes, like Bitcoin, blockchain, the Shanghai Cooperation, which is a cooperative. All cooperatives are decentralized by its very nature. This is why, for my students, my Tricks and Traps University students, I have commissioned somebody to teach us how to set up cooperatives, because all cooperatives are decentralized, like Bitcoin, and run it on Bitcoin and things like that. Also, Alex has been commissioned to prepare the ground for these things, because if you do not purge your life of narcissists and psychopaths, or those people with those types of traits, you will not be able to grasp what's coming your way. You will always forfeit death pledges and necromancia for partaking in this golden age. Okay? And then in between that, I will be giving the detailed analysis which has never been done in the history of mankind outside of the people that created the codes, to break the codes that are seen in the films, and how the hypnosis works through subliminal suggestion, through indirect suggestion, and of course episoding as well. Episoding is the most hardest to track because that is usually tracked by the higher functioning parts of your brain, which is usually the genie. That's how they got to control your genie. That's how Richard Branson took away your wish with that song in the 1970s called God Save the Queen and the fascist regime. You wished it into existence when it should have collapsed, but it was presented to you in necromancy, in mirroring, to way of robbing you of the forgiveness. It is they that committed the sin against you, and you forgave their sins and successfully re-established their contract under the Jubilee by saying, out of your own willful ignorance, because you're so very well fond of protesting, that you won't pick up a pen, but you rather protest. Protest means no test. And walk the entire planet into another 25 years of servitude. The road to hell, if paved with good intentions. I know, I've experienced it with the people that I've helped, not all of them, about 10%. That turn around and try to bite you or steal more from you. How do you steal from a man that freely gives? That's their mind. In terms of the mortgages, don't be into that world where you're going to ask us to do things for free. Don't ask me to do things for free. We are not Jesuses. Don't take a man and sacrifice him, bleed him to death for your stupidity and your patheticness. Jesus is not responsible for your sins. You understand? You are. You control it. No scapegoating. Scapegoating is a direct form of narcissism and psychopathy practiced by necromancers. Yeah. So I'm letting you know, in this corona period, you are men and women. If you wish to remain as humans, unsubscribe to my channel and just leave. Leave. If you want Jesus, Buddhas and all these other people to constantly feed you for your own neglect of life, in favor of death, move away, and you have nothing to do with me and I have nothing to do with you. In the synonymous words, let the dead bury the dead. You have to show signs of life and that you have wealth, wealth of knowledge, wealth of information, finance, capability, that the blood that you have is your own, and that you wish to partake in a world that where you're going to challenge these things for the end in result, for the end in mind. So, for my Tricks and Traps students, I will be sending you a message on what you need to prepare for this year. Okay, it's going to be a fantastic year. And Cody asked me to watch a movie called Tenant. And because of that, it reaffirmed what I was teaching you guys 3 years ago. And I need you to get ready for that business that's about to explode all over the world. Okay? You will hear on an economical scale, and this message is for my Tricks and Traps students, you will hear that that China is collapsing, and this country is collapsing, that country is collapsing. What they are doing is encouraging you to look for new continents, as they did a long time ago. Like a better place for an Irishman is Americas, because if you stay in Ireland, we'll starve you to death. What they're doing is they are gently manipulating people to look for new continents to gravitate towards. And one of those continents, of course, you know by now because I keep mispronouncing it, Kazakhstan, Kaz, Okay. These are subtleties to be able to create new cities, new infrastructures in these places using cooperatives, blockchain, Bitcoin, so on and so forth. Okay. I've made that very clear. Let me go to the presentation before I take up too much of this time. You can see, and this is Merriam-Webster's dictionary, all right, which is part of the law dictionaries that they use. Here, Merriam was a professional liar, and he confessed it in the opening pages of his dictionary, which is that I was commissioned to bastardize the English language, which we already know, and people in their 70s know so well. Necromancy means conjuring, okay, of spirits and the dead, purposes of magic, revealing the future or influencing the course of events. That is what governments and banks like to do. They like to manipulate and keep you and manipulate your spiritual nature for the purposes of conjuring. Purposes of conjuring, okay? Not the dark forces that you thought it was working in the background of the mind in the spiritual world. That which happens to you, the evil that is happening to you now, is happening in this world, in this three-dimensional world, to you directly. And through the use of the movies and etc., they get you to believe that you have to go on a spiritual journey to tackle them. Now, you tackle them in the places that they have, with the tools that you have, with the friends that you have, and the resources that you have. But it must start here and now. You know, just to remind you what necromancer means, nom de guerre means. Yeah, it's a fake name or a pseudonym for use of a particular task or job. The reason why they give you a pseudonym because you're about to do pseudo things. Pseudo means false. Yeah, so when they say Neil Armstrong went to the moon, they're giving him a pseudo name because there is no such thing as Neil Armstrong, to say as something fake has happened. That's part of the legal fiction names. Okay, that's what that means. So if you're a soldier, they give you a nom de guerre name, written in all capitals, it's because you're about to do something fake, something pseudonym. Pseudonym means what? False. Okay, that's what that means. Don't ever forget it. This is my website. You will begin, if you have not seen my website in these blockbuster movies already, you'll see more of it. Okay. This is the Federal Postal Court doing its job, dealing with the mortgages and etc. You remember the COVID-19 tests? You remember that? The piece of paper that they sent to you? Just read what it says. Ipsos mori. It's right there, right in front of you. Let me see if I can blow it up. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, you know what that means. What does it mean? Do you remember? Anybody know what it means? Ipsos mori. Yeah, they die. They die. Openly announcing from Imperial College, Department of Health and Social Care, openly telling you we've engaged a corporation to let you know you die. Yeah. There is more necromancy, indirect and directly, than you can possibly imagine. Okay. And the things that you're looking at is not what you think it is, because there's a great deal of mirroring here. Only the mori is written in all capitals, which means it's dead. Dead. To let you know it's dead. Dead people speaking to dead people. Yeah. These words of let the dead bury the dead are very profound. Ipsos means they in Latin. That's Latin as well. This is in your face. And the multitude of personalities that you would develop is to protect yourself in a quasi-world of hiding from the truth of what I'm showing you. Yeah, that's why you have multiple characters, multiple personalities, because you can't deal with life. It's too horrific, because if you go after them, it's like striking a match. Every monster in the world will know that you've stricken a match. You've brought light into the world, and they see you. And they are also petrified of what the light will do. Like that iconic scene in Time Machine, the one in the 1950s, I think it is, when the time traveler, strikes a match to see the Morlocks are in front of him. The Morlocks flee, and he only has fleeting seconds to pass that torch on to something or someone else to keep it life, to give it life. Yeah, so the Morlocks are frightened of the light. Anybody going through this journey have already struck that match. They've already struck it. Yeah, that's the power of knowledge. You know, I showed everybody that even though, this is I think in Australia, that even if you pay off your so-called mortgage, they still hold you in perpetual servitude as a joint tenant. A tenant in death, including everybody else that lives in it. This is how the necromancers work. Okay, so whether you're in Australia, whether in the US, it doesn't really matter. It always rolls out the same. See, tenant. Mortgage fully paid off, but he's still a tenant. Tenant to a necromancer. Quite horrific, isn't it? Even your car all signifies this. And I've given you a detailed explanation of what these documents mean and the significance of it. Make use of it. This is the Irish Parliament. You know the Irish, the unwanting, unknowing Irish, they were all slaves in their own country, called subjects, subject to the crown or the queen. If you want this document, email me. It shows you. This is what you're up against. And the men and women that fight that, certainly my students, we know what we're up against, because that which was done by your forefathers can be undone by you with a stroke of a pen. But all necromancers are not going to let you go that easy, are they? Because without you, they have no life. You understand? It is in death that they want company, and it is in your death that you keep them in your company. That's why you cannot make contract. How many of you Irish men and women out there have taken a pen to paper and told your government to F off under the authorization of your own pen and your autograph and your thumbprint, what they call conventionally your God-given seal? The point I'm making, ladies and gentlemen, is that by just reading some of these documents, which I do not wish to do, you can go and get it from my website called mkchristopher.com. Okay, you can see what you're up against and what you have done without reading these documents. However, you see, when you are presented with two different documents at two different times, they are not attached. They're two different contracts. You understand what I'm saying? So if you have, this is contract law, that's your original contract and that's what you signed up to, and anybody else later on makes an attachment to this piece of paper, but they never do, and they try to fix this piece of paper to this fixed paper, They have broken contract law already. And the job of the administrative court is get you to give your permission to them to bring it together. So let's imagine this is a contract for marriage. These are the terms and conditions of the marriage with your wife and your so-called husband. The husband makes new conditions, takes you to court, and gets you to fix his new conditions, saying that you'll do what you're told, you'll give up all your money, and you have a good whipping once a week. And then the courts will attach it for him and say, yeah, okay, it's all done and dusted. And now you call the police to say your husband is beating you. The police are aware of the contract and simply say, well, there's nothing we can do because you consented to it. Because what does a husband mean? What does a husband mean? It means animal husbandry. Yeah, the words, ladies and gentlemen, even with husband and wife, is not what you think it is. It is all to support the Necromancy world. The good men and women out there who believe it means this or that do it only by intention, what is known as presumption assumption. In reality, your so-called husband and your so-called wife are mates. Mate is also a maritime word, and it's also found in nature. Okay, and nobody, especially a church, especially the Catholic Church, can ever create a mirage called a marriage over you to administer your marriage. These are all part of the necromancy world. You understand? Of course you do. So go through these documents. Look at this. Look what it says. I don't want to read it. And the reason why is because it's time consuming. These things are available. And if you're frightened, you are correct to be frightened. Okay, I asked a simple question and it came up with this. This is why you must never, ever call yourself a white man or a black man, because you signed yourself out of contract law. Just to remind you again what necromancy means. Conjuring. Okay? Conjuring is what it means. Just read it. Take a few seconds and read it. Most of these type of documents are found on my website. If you want to have the Irish one, email me. Full stop. Ladies and gentlemen, since David passed away, it has been my responsibility to do what I do. And as a result, I feel I'm like one of the most blessed men on this planet to be able to be in a position to purge, quite literally purge, the death pledges and the sins called debts from mankind. And this feeling has resonated with all the other people within the Federal Postal Court system who also have the same calling in life. You see, my wishes are very simple. I don't want to be in a position where I need to talk to the dead. Well, what do I do about it? Well, it's very simple. I educate them and give them life. Easy enough to do. As a plenipotentiary judge, I do a reasonable job, would you not say? If not, let me know. As a Federal Postal Court judge, I go at it with all 12 pistons firing. I put my heart and soul into it because I feel that I've been blessed to be able to bring mankind out of servitude and mortgages, death pledges. For me, and I have a very simple background, being in East London, It's not a humbling word, but I don't know what other words I can use. It certainly takes my breath away so many times. Absolutely takes my breath away. And as so many people in the Federal Postal Court says, It's almost like a surreal moment at times. You see, your faith and our faith can virtually overshadow an entire world and infrastructure and bureaucracy of necromancy, mortgages, death pledges, religions, and etc. That's the power that you have with your word, which is your bond, that you have with your autograph, which is a graph of your autonomy, and that you have with your thumbprint, fingerprint, which is unique to you, which is another word for a genie. You understand what I'm saying to you? You are in the corona period. You have been birthed into this brand new world. Look, the sunlight outside is flooding through my window. I had to put a curtain up to block it. Normally in England, it's quite, shall we say, grey this time of the month. Go outside if you are in Britain, as it were. England is the place, Britain is the maritime. And look at the sky. It's powder blue. I haven't seen that sky in over 25 years. Well, I did a few months back. The controllers of your world are clearing up the mess that the Olympians left behind that nearly threw you into a perpetual state of darkness, in a perpetual state of you having to even pay for the air that you breathe, called carbon tax. The Victorians used to have a tax known as sunshine tax, colloquially. That is, when you rented out a home, all the windows were bricked up. And if you wanted those windows bricked up, removed, the bricks removed from those windows, you had to pay the landlord a tax called sunshine tax. Those types of sunshine tax are also known as carbon taxes, but they can work against the very people that created it for the downfall of man. You see, the world that you live in, the world of titans, is a position of cleverness, is a position of putting mankind in a position where they can take control of themselves and become responsible for their own health and banking and so on and so forth. And that's what the infrastructure around you is doing. Take control of it. It's yours. Thank you very much for listening to me, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time.